What's good, friends? Ebony Chappelle checking in with something entrepreneurial for your podcast listening and viewing pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of What's Good with Ebony Chappelle. So, today I am talking with a powerhouse of a woman. She is a creator, she's an entrepreneur, she's a mom, she's a wife, she does all the things. And she is one of the founders behind a very cool brand and publication in the city of Indianapolis called Indy Maven. So, Indy Maven is an outlet that caters to things that women and femme folks care about in central Indiana. And it is so forward and so thoughtful in so many ways. I've written a couple of pieces for Indy Maven. I've served as an ambassador. They've given me a lot of love over the years and have really helped to bolster the culture of women making it happen and women finding opportunities to work with one another and be collaborative and be innovative with one another. It's amazing the things that Indy Maven has been able to make happen in such a short amount of time. I mean, this publication basically launched right before the pandemic. So it's just crazy how things have gone. So Leslie and I get into that. We get into, we talk about one of our favorite people, which is Rachel Rogers. I don't know if I've talked about Rachel Rogers on this show before, but she is, and let me pull up the exact name of the book because I want y'all to tap into this. Actually, she was first mentioned on the show when I interviewed Jennifer Magley. So if you listen to that episode, she mentioned this book, but it's called We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. And yeah, we talk about some of the lessons that she has preached in her work. So it's just so cool. So before I go any further, let's just jump into this conversation with Leslie Bailey of Indy Maven. Yeah, and unfortunately, that person is me. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, so I'd like to start off by asking people what's good with them, and that can be
Mm.
really anything like what's bringing a smile to your face, making you feel good these days.
Well, my youngest son just turned 2 yesterday, and
Happy
that was
birthday.
fun. Well, and actually, it's actually not very fun because he just turned into like this raging 2-year-old. Like he just
So the
went from like
terrible twos are
the
real.
terrible to yeah. Except I thought with my first one, who was 4, I thought threes were worse. So I'm just like, why am I
Mm.
doing this all over again? But that was fun. Like even though he's kind of being a terror. I was looking at pictures this morning, of the last 2 years, and I was actually showing my
Mm-hmm.
4-year-old all the pictures of him, of the other one growing up, and so that's been fun. And the space, so Maven Space, now open, and I
Yes,
there's so
definitely
much
want to talk
good.
about that later. Yeah.
Yeah, so much good, but also, that's I'm having to just remember to intentionally focus on the good. I think there's lots of good. I think I've
Mm-hmm.
just personally been guilty lately of focusing on all the going wrongs and the bad and the negative,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And just out of curiosity, why do you think that is for you personally? Like I have a similar thing that I go through, but I'm always, wanting to hear from other people like what is it that makes you go there?
I think it's I think it's the way my anxiety uh
Okay.
manifests because, and I think my husband pointed this out, and he jokes and we call it cracks in the ceiling, but I will literally
Mm,
start to notice everything that is wrong with everything. And like
okay.
one day we were looking and I was like, there are cracks in our ceiling. And I was obsessed with getting the cracks in our ceiling fixed, which are they're so small. No one else would notice. And it
Mm-hmm.
is the thing I will obsess over. And,
Yeah.
I think like, and I'll do it with my space, like my physical space, my surroundings. Like as I walked in here,
Mm-hmm.
I just noticed, oh my gosh, something's wrong with the floor. I don't think that was there before. Was that there before? Did somebody do that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I think it's a manifestation of my anxiety, which is really about other things, right? It's not about the cracks in
Yeah.
the ceiling, but that's where it comes out, and then it just sort of snowballs.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I feel like anxiety is just this sneaky little thing. Like,
Mhm.
one, it's, for people that deal with it regularly, it is ever present. But the
Mhm.
way that it pops up sometimes in the most, I always feel like it's just so inconvenient. It's like, why right now are we doing this? Like, why is this
Yes.
happening right now? It's just, it's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just recognizing, I think, I don't know, I feel like anxiety is sneakier than depression. Depression's sneaky for sure, and I've definitely had both,
Mhm.
but I mean,
Yeah.
there's a pretty clear signal for me when depression, whereas anxiety just sneaks up on me a lot faster.
Mhm. Yeah. And I really think a lot of things come out being women and being in an entrepreneurial space. Like, there's a certain amount of pressure that comes with that, just
Mm,
the external pressure, and then internally there's like this certain pressure that we put on ourselves. But I am excited that you have recognized the good even in the midst of managing all of the other stuff, all the background noise
yeah.
that's going along with it. Yeah. So I want to, rewind a little bit in time for people that are listening that aren't familiar with you, aren't familiar with Indy Maven. Tell us how Indy Maven came about.
So, after my first son that I just mentioned was born,
Mhm.
I had taken time off. My mom passed away when I was 3 months pregnant with him, and so I had just gotten over, like, the loss of my mother and now this raising this child, and he's now a year old, and I'm thinking, well, previously, I was a journalist. I guess I still am, but I don't do so
Mhm.
much of that anymore, but, um, I was a writer and an editor and worked I always worked for other publications,
Mhm.
and I
And you were doing that
wanted
at the time when your mom passed and when you were pregnant. You were
I
still
had
doing
actually
that.
taken the ti I left my job as lifestyle editor at Indianapolis Monthly because my
Mhm.
mom was kinda just going downhill health-wise, and
Okay.
I wanted to be able to support my dad and caretake, with alongside him, and so
Mhm.
I had already left knowing that that was coming and that I wanted to spend
Okay.
that time with her, and during that time, also got pregnant. So,
Okay.
I just knew I mean, it's motherhood, really, honestly. I think it was motherhood and the combination of motherhood and then going through a life-changing both of those things were life-changing, right? Losing a parent and becoming a mother sort of simultaneously made me really reflect on what did I wanna do with my time? How did I want to spend it? And did I ultimately, do I wanna work for other people? I've always been creative, and as you know, like, a creative, and then I had this entrepreneur streak. Both my parents were entrepreneurs, and I never registered that till very recently, but I thought, well, now is the time to go out on my own, and I was fortunate to have a supportive partner, like, emotionally, financially, all of the things that made that possible, and it just seemed like the right time to go try and do something on my own, and at that time, my co-founder and Indy Maven, Amanda Kingsbury, was also sort of, like, in between things and going through similar but different life stuff, and so we just thought that was a good time to try and bring some of our ideas to fruition, and so we launched Indy Maven in October 2019.
Awesome. And since then, you all have weathered some storms.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we launched October 2019.
Mhm.
I found out that I was pregnant now with my 2nd son the night before our launch party.
Mhm.
And I'm so nauseous, like carrying 200 boxes around this hotel and just like, what am I doing? And then 5 months later, COVID,
Yep.
and then had a COVID baby. So
Mhm.
it just was none of these things that I had planned for, like life
Yeah.
just laughing at me. And so it didn't look like none of it looked like what I thought it was going to look like, but
Mhm.
ultimately there was, finding the good in it. I really was able, after the initial panic and sort of also just getting over myself, like, it's okay if this business doesn't work. You have like a couple of independent contractors. I'm not like responsible for people's paychecks to feed their families and keep roofs over their heads. So I had to get some perspective there too. But I
Very
had put a lot of,
important.
but time and energy and, all the things into it. So I wanted to see it succeed. And then we were just kind of pleasantly surprised because so it's a digital lifestyle product for women in central Indiana. So at the time where everyone was sitting in front of their computers, we had something that we were already working to get attention digitally. And so it just kind of, it
Mhm.
ended up being a silver lining for us for sure.
Yeah, that is such a beautiful story. And I love that you pointed out that silver lining because there are so many things that I feel like this time made possible that couldn't have been possible at any other point. Just looking at the way that our lives looked pre-pandemic, and people keep saying post-pandemic, and I'm like, I just really don't feel like that's the right
Well,
thing
not
to
at all. Have
say.
you checked the numbers today? No,
Whew.
it's not.
Like, I refuse to check them
No.
because
It snuck up
I
on my Twitter feed today, and I was like,
so
okay.
it's that bad.
It's not great.
Well, there's that. There's
But
that.
we also have
Yeah.
right? We're learning
Mhm.
to adapt in how we live with it, and I think
Yeah.
there's something to be said for that. And I don't want to
Mhm.
say that we've just sort of given up. I don't look at it like that. Well, like, okay, some people definitely have, but I've just
Yeah, yeah,
figured we're
quite a few.
learning to live with it. I'm
Yeah.
just sort of like, for right now and for the next foreseeable future, this is part of our lives, and so we
Mhm.
just need to deal with it the best that we can, and also
Yeah.
recognize there are things that are out of our control.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had that come literally to my front doorstep a couple weeks ago because I tested positive for
Mm.
COVID and I hadn't had it this whole time. So I was able to skip like 2020,
Yep,
21,
I just got it in
22.
February.
You did this
Yeah,
year? Yeah.
yep, this year, and I was
Ah,
like, oh, but
okay.
it was gonna happen, right? It just,
You're right. Yeah. It
I
was
don't
going
know.
to
Yeah,
eventually, I guess. But I think I had gotten into the mindset of which was probably wrong, not probably, it was wrong on my part. I had just kind of made peace with the fact, like, maybe it's not gonna happen to me. Maybe I'm just like this anomaly that's not gonna get it, and then boom.
yep. Again, these things sneak right up on us.
Yeah, they do. They do. So, tell us a little bit about some of the things that Indy Maven does. So, online lifestyle brand for women in Central
Mhm.
Indiana. What kind of stories are you all telling, and what kind of stories do you wish to tell in the future?
Gosh, I mean, we run the gamut truly of like,
Mhm.
here's how to style a little black sundress this summer, all the way up to, sharing a perspective of, like, gosh, there are so many things. Like, I just had 6 stories kind of come to mind. One of the things I'm really liking we're doing is we partnered with Women for Change to
Mhm.
highlight the different bills and initiatives that they're focused on for the year. So, up until recently, women who were incarcerated gave birth in shackles. And now that has since
Wow.
changed through the work that they do. And so we reported on that. And that to me is just the 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 stuff that really matters, but I also
Mhm.
don't want to discount the fact that I think a lot of women sort of shame themselves or embarrassed for liking makeup and picking out a new lipstick. And it's like, no, if that red
Yeah.
lip makes you happy, there is value to
Enjoy.
that. That is
Yes.
like, that is okay. You can care just as much about these
Mhm.
women who are going through this awful situation. Learn how to help them. Like, right, too. That's a huge part of it. I think
Mhm.
we're I'm proud of the storytelling that we do because we will often, or if not always, try and here's how you can work that into your life. Here's where you can go buy the little black dress. Here's what you can do if you don't agree with this legislation. And
Mhm.
so I think ultimately I would just like to have the capacity to do more of what we're doing.
Mhm.
Our executive editor, Stephanie Groves, does an amazing job. I would not change a thing about what she does and how she does it. I just would love to be able to have the capacity we put out a free weekly newsletter. I would love to be able to have something posting every day.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is we're not there yet. I think we're close. We're much closer than I kind of expected us to be, but that's I'd like to more see like the frequency and just be able to do more. And I would also like to be able to um, do more in our community. And that I think that's the thing too is a lot of people have expectations once you have a successful brand of like, well, that you're able to give back. But we also are like a very small team on a very small budget, limited capacity, and it takes a lot. And also, we just went through to the point, to your point, like
Yeah.
launching a business during a pandemic. The fact that we're even here to me is a testament to all of the women in the community that have made this come together. But also we have to recognize like, of course I would love to do more, but if I don't remind myself of those, I don't want to say limitations, but just the circumstances we're
Mm-hmm.
in, that's when I get down on myself and like, we should be more places, we should be covering that story, we should
Yeah.
be, we can't, because we're just humans going through a very traumatic several
Mm-hmm.
couple years for so many different reasons. So but yeah, we have the content free award winning weekly newsletter that goes out every Thursday. We then also have monthly meetups. So this month, like June 23rd, it's they're based around our editorial theme. So that one is style. So here at
Mm-hmm.
Maven Space, which like you said, we'll get to, those are a great way to connect with women in person. And then we also have an optional membership program. So for either $9.99 a month or $99 a year, you get free access to those meetups. We have a member portal with perks with local businesses that you can support, and then a private Facebook and LinkedIn group. So that kind of encompasses the Indy Maven brand. And then separately, we have Maven Space, which is like a sister company.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. I just want to dive in on a couple of things you mentioned. One, just to give you some kudos, you and the team some kudos. Indy Maven, I think it's such a great outlet for a few different reasons. One, there's a lot that happens in Indianapolis, like a lot. And when you look at the entire like political spectrum, like if we just want to look at that as a whole, there's a lot that happens here that is like a direct mirror of what's happening nationally, um good and bad. Like
Mhm.
there's so much we can get into there. um so having a space that makes that information accessible while also not divorcing some of the other things that women and femme people care about, I think is so important, because I hate that idea that things that are important to us are frivolous
Mhm.
because they don't align with, you know, patriarchy or whatever. Like it's weird and annoying. So,
I
you
like that
know,
word you used, the divorcing. That's the
mhm.
perfect way to put it. It doesn't need to be that way.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because we are multifaceted human beings. So we should be able to speak to all of these things because, you know, when you look at other outlets, like no one's saying, oh, why are they covering sports? Like, now there are some people that would say that, but for the most part, no one's
Mhm.
questioning why that's a thing. So it's like,
Mhm.
why would we question why style or, you know, personal care or self care, excuse me, would be, you know, something that doesn't fit or isn't important to highlight? So definitely wanted to give you your kudos on that. And I wanted to dive in a little bit more on that point about feeling like you have to do everything right now. I feel like that's something that a lot of creators and entrepreneurs fall into. And I wonder, do you think it has anything to do with coming out of the because you're still in the journalism space, but just like in a different version of that? Do you think it has anything to do with coming out of that world to have that mindset where you feel like all this stuff has to happen at once? Because that, like,
Yeah.
yeah, the journalism world is brutal in general when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure I ever thought about that, but there's definitely, especially I worked in a newsroom for almost
Uh-huh.
5 years, right? Well, no longer if you count freelancing. So there's definitely that sense of urgency of like we need to be the
Mhm.
first people to do it. And then I think when you're used to not that newspapers or magazines just have unlimited resources, especially now, but I
Yeah.
definitely had more resources than I do now. Used to be able, you're used to being able to do more. right? Because
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, the company's going to pay for this piece of equipment you need because it helps you do your job.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, and you own your own business, it's like, I can't pay for that right now. Of course, I would be able to do my job better, but who's going to pay for that? Not getting that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you kind of just have to figure it out. Yeah. And so then it's a cycle though, right? Then that perpetuates. Well, like, well, how can I keep up with everybody else? Then on the flip side, it's like there are bloggers out there, right? Like, look at there have been full build movies made on iPhones. So
Mm-hmm.
you can also be thrifty and figure it out.
Yeah, and who says you have to do every single thing? It's like if
Yeah.
there are certain things that you can do extremely well and the audience gets some value out of it, focusing in on that I think is fine too. But it's like it's so hard because I have struggled with this in so many different, facets of my
Yeah.
life, feeling like, oh my God, I have to do all the things because the need, like when you understand that the need is so great, it
Hmm.
can put that pressure on you to feel like you have to do everything. But I just feel like we have to
That's a good
understand,
point
like,
too.
that's not. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, and when you're doing something in a space where not that many people are, because that's
Mhm.
why you created the space, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
we felt that there was a lack of storytelling for women in our community. And whether or not you're a woman, however you identify, it's that type of content, right? That a
Yeah.
lot of people would say is for women. Um, and when you realize as you dive in, there's more here than you ever imagined. There's more need, there's more stories, there are more women to know, there's always more and more and more. And
Mhm.
then when there are only a handful of people who are choosing to focus on those issues, then you feel a heavier weight of responsibility because you want to serve as a voice and a platform for these communities. Yet here you are, the one with the more limited resources. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a catch 22.
It is. It is. And I hope that sooner than later that those resources are able to materialize to kind of ease that pressure a little bit.
Yeah. You
So
and me both.
yeah. Yeah. So Maven Space, let's jump into it. You mentioned it earlier, but tell us about the space and what type of things are going on over there.
So back to what we were talking about that first, so COVID hitting that March, that first summer, I was
Mhm.
panicking. Like, I don't know what this is going to be because events were such a big part of our model, in addition to the storytelling
Yeah.
and the content. It was basically all in-person events. And so I thought, well, let's I think probably smart people in my life said, why don't you ask them? Why don't you ask the audience what they want? I'm sure it was
Mhm.
not my idea. But I did, and they said just like connect with other women, meet other women, support people in our community, like all of the things that really lended itself to being in person. So at first I was discouraged by that. And then around that time, I also, Rachel Rogers, she's an author, has a podcast, We Should All Be Millionaires, all about supporting,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
Rachel.
Uh,
Okay, so then so Rachel Rogers. So I was listening to her
yes.
podcast, and she
I
has
didn't
this.
know she had a podcast though, so now I'm gonna have to get on
Uh-huh.
that because I devoured the book.
Yes,
Jen
yes.
Magley recommended it to me, and I
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
ran
we've
right
talked
through
about
it.
it. Jen and I
Yep.
have talked about it.
Yep.
So on the podcast, she had a guest that said, she was an attorney and said the highest number of
Mhm.
trademarks ever were filed this year, and highest number of women. And I was like, that's so interesting. And then right away, I was like, women are starting businesses. They can't
Yep.
be at their jobs anymore for numerous reasons, right? And
Mhm.
related to COVID. And so now they're like, well, I got to do something, or I want to do something. And so, right, they're filing trademarks because they're starting businesses. And then I thought, oh my gosh, that's what this is. It's a co-working space, right? We have them all over the world, and we have them for women.
Mhm.
Um, and then also, some of the early iterations, being able to look at what they did and go, I don't really want to do it that way, or there's some real fundamental flaws with that one, and
Yeah.
can we expand? And we're, the Lola in Atlanta, which is one of the that I look to, welcoming the trans, non-binary people. Like, how can we sort of carve out this space that we want to feel safe and special and supportive for different groups of people, but all who are like-minded. And so I kind of like, this was before we talked about great resignation, all of this. And so put all those ideas together and was like, I need to start a space like that. that's what this has to be. And so my husband put me in touch with an amazing commercial realtor, Jenna Barnett at Newmark, and this was the first space she showed me. And was
Wow.
everything on my list. And we've talked about this before, and putting things out into the world. I
Hmm.
just made this crazy wish list, and then she's like, "Here you go," and just delivered it. It was first place. We looked at others. I did my due diligence, but this was it. And so I didn't know how we are gonna do it. And then I start researching things, like, I knew about VC funding, and then not a lot went to women, you know, but, oh, did I unravel that whole can of worms and was like, "Why does anyone
Mm.
try and do that?" And then at the time, I came across I
It can
Fund
be very
Women.
daunting. Like,
Oh,
I have not done it myself, but I have
fundraising? Yeah.
listened to a lot of research on it and read a ton, and it just sounds completely insane. Like, if you can hit a good stride with that and meet good people, God bless you, but the rest of it sounds
Well, yeah,
disastrous.
and if you've got a couple years, right, these I think
Yeah.
that works if you're like, "Well, yeah, 5 years from now, here's the plan. I'm gonna fundraise, and I'm gonna take that approach."
Mhm.
Probably. This was like, "This is available now at a perfect price to weigh," and well, this is still a lot of money, but in a way that I was like,
Mhm.
"We can test this in the market. I really fully believe this is gonna be successful, so I'm willing to take this risk." There are elements of it that made it a little less riskier, still a big risk. And
Mhm.
so I don't know, I just felt like it was the followed my intuition, and we moved forward without doing the funding. But around that time, I came across I Fund Women and
Mhm.
the things Karen Kahn and they're doing over there. And I didn't end up crowdfunding, but or at least right now, who knows, maybe I'll need to. But it just opened my eyes up to this world of funding and financing and entrepreneurship that I just couldn't get enough of learning about it. So even if it's like what I take and am able to pass on, even if I didn't do crowdfunding, just knowing, and then I learned about spaces like the Lola through their website and everything that they do. So ultimately, I cobbled together what I cobbled together financially, and then we opened the space 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago today.
Wow. Well, congratulations on
Thanks.
your 4-week
I didn't realize
anniversary.
that. Yeah,
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah,
So what all is in the space? I
yeah.
haven't had an opportunity to come visit yet, but very soon.
Yes,
So, yeah.
please do come visit. So, we are downtown in the Gibson building, which is located at Michigan and Capitol. And this was previously Salesforce space. So, a lot of people have been in
Mhm.
here for different events that they held, but it's 15,000 square feet. And I'm actually in one of our phone booths right now.
Mm,
But,
perfect.
we it's a pretty wide open floor plan because idea is that you're here with community, right? You can
Mhm.
go get a private office, lots of different spaces, but you're here because you want to connect. But of course, we do have phone booths and private rooms and that. But we've got a mother's room, we've got a lending library, we have a content creation studio, fully equipped with podcast equipment from Share Your Genius. The Milk Bank sponsored our mother's room. We've got a cafe. So, we just signed on. I haven't announced this yet, but it's officially official. Fork and Function is a
Okay. I haven't heard
locally
of
owned,
them.
women-owned company that does catering and meal delivery. So they're going to open up in our cafe in July, and then we have a gym, we have a catering kitchen, and then we have a really large event space as well. So we are a membership model based, but we also have a lot of programming for the community, whether you're not a member or not a member. And then the space is also available to use as an event venue rental space, and there are meeting rooms available too.
Awesome. I'm so excited about the fact that the space is now open and people are going to be able to do all sorts of wonderful things there. And I love the concept of working in community.
Mhm.
I when the pandemic hit, I was actually transitioning jobs. So I transitioned to my day job in April of 2020. So I had to do all my onboarding and stuff at home alone. It was just
Yeah.
so weird, such a weird way to start a job. But it all worked out. But one of the things now that I've started to go back into an office space, I love having options because we're still hybrid, still,
Mhm.
doing whatever. So I love having that open space. And it's something so cool about going to like a coffee shop or a co-working space and running into people in the community and how those I like these organic ideas just kind of pop up just seeing somebody, because it's totally different than the online thing, which we're grateful for Zoom and different tools like that, but there's nothing like being face to face with other people and the things that come up, when you're there with one another.
And I get to see that. I feel so lucky. I get to see that every day. Like a couple weeks ago, two women, I introduced them and they were like, "Wait, you're so and so? You're so and so?" They've been friends for over 10 years online, living in
Wow.
the same city, go to all the same events, and had never met in person. And I was like, "How is that possible?" I almost didn't even introduce them because I was like, I do that a lot where I'm like, "Surely you know each other."
Surely not.
And they
Yeah.
don't. And so that's really fun to see, but also like seeing collaborations already coming to fruition here. Like, oh, we need to work on, people getting clients. Like
Hmm.
the amount of like, again, like just support and collaboration that we wanted to see. I mean, it was happening before we even opened our doors. So it's doing what it was supposed to do and so much more.
Yeah, that is incredible, 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 incredible. So
Thank
when
you.
you look to the future, what are some of the things that you're excited about or looking forward to?
Oh gosh, so many things. Well, in the last couple months, so there's a company called Chief, which is sort of for like VP level and higher, but a social club and space, co-working space for women, and all that kind of the tier one cities. So they recently hit unicorn status, and so they're valued $1 billion. They're women led, like they hit all those things. And when I saw that happen, I was like, that's proof, right? Because there are lots of
Hmm.
space, but I was like, that is proof that if we invest in women, and if you know Rachel Rogers, you've heard this all anyway, like
Yep.
and we put this in our messaging now because I was like, that's what changes the world. And that is a huge statement, but I stand by it because when women thrive, all of us thrive. And
Yes.
so I thought about that and I was like, well, so that's great if you're at that level in your career, VP or higher. So I love that for you, chief. But I was like, well, how do you get there? And maybe you're not like climbing a corporate ladder, but like maybe you're just on the entrepreneur track or whatever. But
Hmm.
what is the support system that we have to get you to go become a chief member? And that's what I want this space to be because that covers talent retention for our city when you have a space like this.
Yep.
This is economic development. Like early on, or even sometimes when I tell, and it often is men, like, "Oh, that's cute," "Oh, you girls go off and have a place to have water, whatever you do."
Wow.
I'm like, "It's so much more than that." Like, you have no idea. It is so much more than that. And again, those are huge things to take on, but I believe they're that important, so I'm willing to try and figure that out. I can't do it on my own. I definitely need the community behind me, and with me and supporting me and all around me, not just behind me. But
Hmm.
that excited me. Like when I heard that news, I was like, "Oh, I see where we fit in this like chain, like this ecosystem now." And I don't know how long it's going to take for other people to catch up here, but it's like the ones who get it right away, and they're in,
Hmm.
and they want to know, and they want to support. So that has been very exciting to see. I have already loved like getting the feedback and sort of it bums me out in some ways because hearing the things that women need make me sad sometimes where I'm like, wow, this is where we are
So
as
what
a
are some of the
society.
things that make you sad that you hear?
The limitations around childcare. So that is definitely something I would be looking at in like future versions of this. And like Jillian Walker in our community had done a lot early on at looking to do so a space. And so we've talked a lot about what that could look like and other business owners and attorneys here in the space. I'm having those conversations very early on, right? Because
Hmm.
childcare is just something that affects so many women and specifically women. Like, yes, it's
Yep.
and parents in general, but women specifically. So that has bummed me out that the limitations that went like the limitations that are set on women because of the lack of support and childcare that we have in our community in our country. The like isolation and depression um,
Hmm.
has been a bummer. And then also just the way that women, myself included, this is not including me, but just tend to operate and how hard we are on ourselves and just how hard we are on ourselves, right? It's like
Hmm.
so much is set up against us And instead of saying, you know what, the odds aren't exactly stacked in my favor, and like channeling that into good. Well, then again, we're tired, so I can't say we just need to channel that and fix it. It's because it's so much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But just that we're still so hard on ourselves for things that are also out of our control. That's really what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
And I'm saying that as a white woman in the world who is like very privileged and has a support and has a supportive husband, and for all intents and purposes, I'm good, right? But my God, like it is still so hard.
Yeah.
And so that's what bums me out, is that also seeing the women every day is just like a reminder. But I am in a position, I think, to be able to take that and fuel that, and like, you can lean on me right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not that I have all the answers, but that we're creating a web and a community. So it's not just me, it's anyone who's in here can help you and support you and hopefully take away some of those burdens.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, thinking about what you're saying and reflecting on some of the stuff from Rachel Rogers, I honestly feel like that's going to be our key moving forward, is figuring out ways to work together and support one another. Because like you said, there are so many things stacked against us. You have things that you experienced. I'm, a single Black woman. There's a lot of stuff that I experienced too. I was on Twitter the other day, and um, someone posted about, they didn't use the word microaggression, but it's something similar. But basically, when you are a woman in a space and let's say you're surrounded by men, and the expectation is that you will do all these little tiny things that add up to be very laborious, like you'll be the one that'll send the calendar invite, you'll be the one
Mm-hmm.
that'll take the notes, you'll be the one that'll do this, do that, as if you don't already have your own workload to deal with. So
Yeah.
they were saying that now that um, a lot of people are going back into the office, women are realizing like, wow, this is something that really pisses me off that I
It's so much more
forgot.
visible now. Yeah.
Yes, I
We're so much
forgot
more
this was
aware.
a thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was
Yeah.
just one that popped up the other day, and I was like, damn, this is so accurate.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and so we have programming in the space as well. So outside of
mm-hmm.
just the physical space, so we launched our programming this week, and
Awesome.
a lot of our members are leading it. And so one of the members, I'm so sad I missed this. So this is coming to me secondhand. I was kind of popping by. I had a meeting, and she had her boss come in, who was a man, and she was talking about how to say no and how to be assertive and
Mm.
how to say no. And he's sitting there and he said, "You guys, I gotta tell you, none of this resonates with me." I was like,
Wow.
Of course it does." But he was like, "I'm so glad I'm hearing this," right? Because that he was saying it in a way of like, that's why I'm here, because I don't have this
Mm-hmm.
experience and I don't have this perspective and I want to know. And so, yes, we do allow men in the space as guests and for
Mm-hmm.
various things and meetings and that kind of thing. But when my colleague pressed him and was like, "So how do you say no?" He's like, "Ask me a question." So she asked him a question and he just looked at her and he goes, "No." And he's like, "And that's how I say no." Right. But as
Mm-hmm.
women, it's like, "I don't think I can. I might be able to fit it in. I probably can't, but I will anyway." Right. And then ultimately the answer is not no. Ultimately, we've said yes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
We forced
so
ourselves into some little cubby hole to make that yes a possibility.
Mhm, mhm. But I loved that he was there. I got to hear that conversation. And I love that he shared that perspective, because it also just made them go, "Well, yeah," and like really kind of dive deeper. I mean, I think we know
Mm-hmm.
that. I don't think they needed a man there to necessarily get that information, but I thought that was a cool experience for everyone, because everybody came out of that with a new perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's I think moments like that are affirming to
Mhm.
hear that, because it's something that we know. Like either you can, like subconsciously know it, or even you've talked with other women and you guys are on the same page about this being a thing. But to have someone in his position come in and basically affirm, like, yeah, like I don't even hesitate to say no. I just say no. I just think is important, and it's important for us to remember that we have that option too.
And not to
Yeah.
overanalyze it, right? Like,
No,
he
don't
could have said,
overanalyze
"Well,
it.
here are my tips and tricks, and here are the things that I do." And he's like, "I just say no."
Mhm.
And I'm super guilty of that. I'm like, I need to listen to a podcast and I need to research and I have to read a blog and I have to follow this Instagram account to learn how to do all of these things that
Yeah,
sometimes are really as simple as just saying
absolutely. I have literally Googled like specific things that have happened to me in professional spaces, like how do you da 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 with a
no. Yeah.
coworker, how do you da 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 with your boss or whatever, because I'm like, I know what I want to have happen, I know what my desired outcome is, but how do I do it without like sounding like a bitch or
You
like
leave that part
rubbing
out.
somebody the
You
wrong
leave that
way.
sentence out.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And not to say we have a total disregard for other people,
for
but you're not
sure.
going to do that anyway because you're not a bad person. You're a good
Yeah.
person, so you're not going to do that. But if you leave
Hmm.
it at that, of like, here's the desired outcome, here's what, period. It's the like not stopping to think what this other person is going to think about me, right? Because that's what he's saying. He's like, I don't think about that. But I had
Hmm.
another man this week tell me, a friend, and I said something, and he just said, "No, all the stuff that you said to me after that, that was irrelevant. You told me what you wanted to happen. You go make that happen."
Hmm.
I was like, "Man, you all live a real simple existence."
Real simple, real simple. And I have gathered like how efficient it is. And I'm like, wow, it's so much faster to
It
get
is.
things done when you just do it like that.
Well, yeah, and then I think there's this honesty. You're not wasting people's time. So I'm
Yep.
trying to be more efficient in that sense too.
Mhm. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Like somebody
And
asked me today,
mhm.
essentially they were asking for something free, and they're an established
Oh.
organization, and I just had to say, and no offense to Salesforce, but I keep hearing this. Salesforce hosts us for free. Salesforce does this for free. I'm like, well, guess what? I gotta pay Salesforce a lot of money every month to keep this space. So if I keep having you in here for free, then the space doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So if they like, I'm glad, and that's awesome for you, but you should probably keep just doing it with Salesforce because I have to
Yeah.
find a way to pay the bills here. And again, that
Mhm.
goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I can't wait for the day that I can open this space up to whoever we want in the community, be able to say, come do whatever you want here, no cost. Like we're doing that for
Mhm.
sure on a regular basis, but not at the scale I'd like to, because we also have to figure out how to make money.
Absolutely. Absolutely you do, because there are things that you want to do, and there are things that you can help people with in the future, things that Indy Maven can provide, and you can never get there if
Mhm.
you're robbing yourself all along the way to appease other people. And I
Yeah.
think, like, yeah, that whole thing, like established organizations wanting stuff for free, like, don't even get me started, because it's completely ridiculous. It's complete, like, nothing
I didn't
about it
realize
makes
how
any
like
sense.
I didn't realize how, like, prevalent it was.
Oh,
I
it's
kind of
bad.
go into conversations expecting that to be, which is,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm trying not to do that, but it's hard not to go into conversations sort of, like, prepared for that to happen at this point, and
Yeah.
I'm still kinda new, at least from the physical space perspective, you know?
Mhm.
But at the end, the person was like, "You know what? I really appreciate that. I'd rather know upfront."
Mhm.
Now we didn't waste each other's time. I said, "We could still
Good.
figure something out, you know, and it just might look different than what your, original ask was."
Mhm. Yeah, and that's fine. And I think sometimes, especially for people that have, their heart is out there and they just want to do well and support and do all that stuff. Sometimes it can be really hard to turn someone away, but I think keeping in mind what the ultimate goal
Yeah.
is so important, because they would do the same thing for themselves. I think that's another important thing to remember, is
Mhm.
like, if they were in the
Yeah.
situation, they would more than likely make the choice that
So
was most
true.
beneficial to them,
So
you
true.
know? Yeah. Ugh. Which leads me into my last question for you, and that is on some of your top lessons in this entrepreneurship journey. What have you taken away from the things that you've experienced thus far? I'm sure there are lots, but
There's so many. Well, I'll give you, like,
yeah.
so a theme this week
Mhm.
has been me learning to ask more questions about the ask of me and
Mm.
my time specifically.
Mhm.
So I've always, like, and similar to you, right, always done a lot of, like, community hosting, emceeing, participating, like events, and I never stopped to ask questions. And actually, Jennifer Magley was the one who taught me this, right? She was
Oh,
like,
Jen.
and I'm like, wait a second, you've not been doing all this for free?
Oh,
She
hell
just
no.
looked at me and I was like,
Hell no. She
oh
is not.
no. No, she is not. And I think too, coming from when I was employed by other
Mm-hmm.
people, right? And that was part of my job, but it just like occurred to me like, oh no, you are your boss now.
Yeah.
And so somebody's got to pay for it. And if it's not the publication you're working at or the company you're working at, like, well, who's paying for it? Right. Because now my time is so much more precious than ever because I have two businesses, two little kids, plus I have my stepson. He's home for the summer. We have life. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I recently said something that yes, and I didn't ask any questions, and it took a lot of time, hours and hours and hours.
Mm.
And later I was like, I could have just put that time into my business, and it was a good cause, and I'm glad I did it. But at the end of the day, like there, there, a budget either existed or could have been made, and
Mm-hmm.
I have to start valuing that time more. Like I value my like 9 to 5, and when I'm at work, well, it's not 9 to 5, but
Mm-hmm.
and I'm so guilty. I constantly am telling other women, right? And like preaching that, like, you need to be compensated for your work and your time and fairly. And then I go out. And so now I have learned that's a big lesson recently. And Jennifer helped me with some of the questions that need to be asked. So I have more information going into things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's like been my biggest theme lately is like I need to make sure that it's easy when you're busy to just like go on autopilot and go so fast and just like, yeah, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
sure, yes, no, maybe, fine. And it's like slow down. And then later you find yourself like, how did I get in this situation? It's because you were going so fast. You didn't stop. You
Yeah.
didn't ask questions. You didn't think about how it was going to affect you or your time or your wellness or your whatever. And then
Mm-hmm.
I find myself like the healthiest thing I ate yesterday were like kale and mushroom egg bites from Starbucks drive through. Like
Wow.
that's like the healthiest thing I'm eating right now because I'm not stopping and going, "What does your body need?" And so
Mm-hmm.
today, my focus was to have a salad for lunch. Nothing else mattered. I stopped in the middle of a meeting. I had to get up and walk away and say, "I'm sorry."
Mm-hmm.
Today, the priority had to be having something green in my body that does not come from a
Yes.
drive-through.
Yes. And you know what? It's so crazy how those little, they seem small, but they're really not small, but how those things is just like a little bit, like reclaiming ourselves just a little bit at a time.
Mhm.
Today I'm going to stop and I'm going to feed myself the thing that I
Reclaiming
really know I
ourselves.
need to.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it takes that, because I think that those things, it's I think it's sending a signal to us, and it's also sending a signal out into the universe or whatever, that this is how I'm going to honor myself. This is how I'm going to take care of myself, because it's so easy for it to go away. Like I definitely have been near where it's like, okay, 12 hours have gone by. I haven't eaten. Everything else has gotten done. I haven't
Mhm.
eaten. And at this point in my life, it's unacceptable. I'm like, I don't care what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, I'm eating. I'm going to bed. I'm leaving
Uh-huh.
because I have other shit to do
Yes, I'm
that doesn't
leaving.
require me sitting in front of this computer.
Yeah.
Because the world will go on, and I think sometimes because we, especially as women, are used to like holding on to so much that we forget like the world's gonna keep spinning even if we aren't literally sacrificing ourselves
Yeah.
for that to
I'm telling
happen.
you, that word that you just said, though, is just running through my head the whole time, reclaiming. Like, I didn't pick
Hmm.
I don't know, people pick a word for the year or whatever, but I was like, that is instantly my word for the year. It's like
I love
reclaiming
it.
my health, reclaiming my time, reclaiming my
Hmm.
agency, reclaiming my I mean, so many things as women, like, that's what we need to be doing. I love that word.
Hmm.
Thank you.
You're very
You're
welcome. I
probably gonna
might
hear
have
me talking about it now.
no, please talk about it, because that's how we make it happen. We have to infiltrate each other in a way. Well, infiltrate is kind of a
Yeah.
strong word, but we have to influence each other to do better, because it doesn't work if we're not all like trying to do it. Like that's how we rebel against the structures that
Yeah,
presently exist. So yeah, no, use it up all
I
the
love
time.
that. I love that.
Yes.
Thank you for what you do too, because this you're doing the exact same thing in your way through all the many things you do, including this.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you. It feels good to hear. So I have the website up at the bottom, indymaven.com. What are the other ways that people can stay connected to you, stay connected to the work, and participate in what you have going on?
Yeah, so if you go to indymaven.com, and the best way is to sign up for the newsletter, hands down, because then that keeps you
Mhm.
up to date on everything that we have going on there, just the
And it's such a
stories, the
great
events.
newsletter.
Thank you, thank you. We work hard on that. And then for Maven Space, it's mavenspace.co, and we just launched our newsletter for that. Is that this week? Monday. Our first one went out Monday. But if you sign up for Indy Maven, we tend to share, even though they are separate businesses. Like I have to make that clear. If you are a member of Indy Maven, it doesn't make you a member of the space
Thanks for that
necessarily.
clarity.
Yes, they're two separate businesses for so many reasons. But just
Hmm.
want to get that out there. But they offer different things too. So we're actually I'm getting ready to send out an email so people can get really clear and understand like what each has to offer, because I know there's a lot of
Hmm.
confusion, especially when they have the same name, and they certainly are related and very similar missions. But yeah, everything is on social at Indy Maven or at my Maven Space. We're
Okay.
real easy to get a hold of.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you again, Leslie, for such an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Very excited about everything that you have going on, and I look forward to seeing you at Maven Space very soon.
Yes, come see us.
All right, friends, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of What's Good with Ebony Chappelle. Thank you, Leslie, for another fabulous conversation. I will drop links in the show notes to Indy Maven so you guys can get connected. Also, Maven Space so you can go and check it out. I'm going to be floating by at some point, so hope to see you out in the community, out and about, and enjoying this amazing space that the Indy Maven team has created and the Maven Space team has created. As always, y'all have a great time and a positive life. Peace.